The Grail is one of the most famous and legendary of all holy relics. But did it really exist? What was it? And where is it today?
There is a real historical possibility that the cup used at the Last Supper would have been preserved.
This is what was found in there, a small stone cup. I don't think the Grail is a physical item. I don't think it can be. It has too much power, it has too much psychological value.
Safely kept in a jiffy bag.
I didn't think I was going to find the Holy Grail in a jiffy bag. Right, OK. It's extraordinary.
We're never going to find the real Holy Grail if we're talking about the cup that was used at the Last Supper, because there's no such thing.
Do you think this is the Holy Grail?
No. They've all got a cup. They all, you know, can heal. It's a piece of industry, if you like, or a piece of business.
Wow. The quest for the Holy Grail is one of the great adventures of all time. It's attracted Arthurian knights, Indiana Jones, and dozens of archaeologists and explorers through the ages. The result is the discovery of a number of cups and chalices which all lay claim to be the real thing. But are they?
It's always seemed rather strange to me that in a very simple meal, given a very simple place, 2,000 years ago, using wooden or very simple pottery bowls, that the cup that Jesus drank out of at the Last Supper could possibly have survived, or that anyone would have even thought about keeping it.
I really don't think that a cup or chalice from the crucifixion or even the Last Supper would have been kept. Now, there may be cups or chalices that were sacred and used in Mass by famous priests such as St. Lawrence or even Paul that have been preserved. And that's entirely possible. You have to look no further than the chalice in Valencia to see that possibility.
One of the problems with identifying the real, true Holy Grail is that there's so much debate about what it really is in the first place.
The Holy Grail is sometimes thought of as the cup that was used at the Last Supper with Jesus and the disciples, and it's also thought to have been the cup that contained some of his blood.
In some ways, the question, what is the Holy Grail, is kind of a bit of a red herring. Or, well, it's got a very simple answer. That in any given telling of the Grail story, the Grail is, or it represents, whatever it is the writer of that particular story wants it to be.
The one great thing about the best of the Grail stories is that the Knights of the Round Table who seek to find it only ever find it when they're dead. So that the Grail is essentially, for me, a spiritual thing, a search.
You know, there's lots of cups and chalices that purport to be the Holy Grail and the one and only. You know, it could be from the 1st century AD, it could be medieval, it could be from a coffee shop in New York City. But the point is, if it's meaningful and symbolic to you, then yes, it is a Grail. We shouldn't think there's just one of them.
I'm on my way to meet a man who believes that the Holy Grail is a small ointment cup that Mary Magdalene used to heal Jesus after his crucifixion, and that he's found it right here in the heart of rural Shropshire in England. His name is Graham Phillips, and hold tight, because it's quite a story. So, Graham, what was it that led you here?
In the mid-1800s, there was a local historian called Thomas Wright, and he claimed that he was descended from the family that possessed the Holy Grail, specifically the Grail that had belonged to Mary Magdalene, the small chalice that she had used, according to the Bible, to collect a few drops of Jesus' blood when he was on the cross.
Okay.
Now, Thomas Wright claimed that he possessed this cup and, unfortunately, had no one to hand it on to. So what he did, seeing himself as some perhaps latter-day Merlin, is to hide this cup and leave a series of clues, cryptic clues as to where it was. Now, these, it was said, were in this book that he had written, which was basically a poem about the local landscape in this area.
Right.
And in this book, at the end of the book, is a picture of somewhere called the Red Castle. And the Red Castle is associated in legend, which is all that's really known about it, with the King Arthur story, where one of Arthur's enemies, the Red Knight, lives in the Red Castle. But back in, like, 1990, when I first came here, I got to this spot, and there is the keep of the Red Castle, exactly as the picture in the book. And this proved to me that, wow, this quest is real, that there has got to be a series of clues, as Thomas Wright claimed.
What's down? Can we go in?
Yeah, this is quite interesting in here. As I say, nobody really knows what the castle was used for.
Right.
And in here, you will find another very mysterious... You need a torch.
Yeah, I got that.
To get it, wind your head. Now, in here, you've got what is said to be locally a well. But it's not.
Oh, my.
It's too wide to be one. And look how deep it is.
Wow.
And all around the walls, you've got these little sort of niches into which would have gone wood to support floors. And the only theory people have is somehow this was a series of floors going deep underground as a sort of medieval bunker, so to speak.
So what would have been down in the bottom?
Nobody knows. And the really interesting thing, of course, as far as the current quest is concerned, is that the picture in the drawing in Thomas Wright's book is drawn from here. And so the first clue in the series, if we're supposed to stand here, says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And the only rock that's in the area that's higher is that one there. And that really is what is known locally as the White Cliff. And it seems to be up there I've got to go.
So that's where the second clue is?
Yes, and in fact, if you just follow me, I'll show you. You can't see it quite through the trees here, but on top of that cliff is a very strange monument, which is also referenced in the clues.
OK, let's go and take a look. Graham took me up to the top of the hill to see the ruins of the chapel close up. If he was right, and the clues did lead to it, then the so-called Hawkstone Grail lay hidden away inside the hill beneath our feet.
So, of course, the next clue tells me that I have to go below the arch, inside the hill. Now, I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to do that? So, if I go round the back of where the arch is in the cliff, I find this astonishing gorge cut through the rock. So I think, well, let's go up here. At the time, a lot of this was overgrown, so I start to have to hack my way through and climb my way over all sorts of fallen branches and different bits and pieces. And I'm thinking, well, is this in any way going to lead me inside the rock and under where the arch is? And astonishingly, that's exactly what it does. Eventually, I found this, an entrance into the cliff itself.
Wow.
This goes right into the cliffs.
Now, this doesn't feel like a cave. This is man-made.
This is man-made. You can see where it's been hacked out. They were originally Roman copper mines, and you can see there the seams of copper, the green copper.
Kind of verdigris.
That's it, yeah, there again.
What was going through your mind when you were tunnelling your way through?
I thought, how long is this going on? I mean, it was going deeper and deeper. And I mean, clearly, from the rubble outside, no one had been in here for, well, decades, perhaps even centuries. But eventually, I came to the part of the cave network that was directly below the arch, which is where the clue had told me to go. So in here, we are directly below the stone arch. So we're where Thomas Wright wanted us to be at the end of his trail of clues. if he's telling the truth, somewhere here must be hidden the Holy Grail. But where? What have we got in here? Take a look at this. This, believe it or not, was originally an eagle statue.
Right.
There's its breast, there's its legs, there's its wings. Its head would have been about there. Now, something I have to tell you about that I'd also found out already about Thomas Wright. At the same time as he was leaving this trail of clues, he had a stained glass window designed and donated to his local church. And in that stained glass window is depicted Mary Magdalene holding the chalice.
OK.
And directly above her head is an eagle. And when I first saw this eagle statue, or discovered that it had originally been an eagle, I thought, this has got to be where Thomas Wright hid the Grail. Maybe he's hidden it inside it somehow. But it's all broken up, and when I found it, it was in the same condition as this. So I looked into the history to find out how it got in this condition. And I found out that in the 1920s, a local businessman called Walter Langham decided that he wanted to have this moved out and put in his garden. When he tried to have it moved, because it is a heavy thing, the tackle broke and the thing smashed apart. But what was interesting, as I found in a little story in a newspaper from the time, is that when the base broke open, inside they found a small stone cup, which they thought was of interest at the time, but they didn't really know why. End of story. And I thought, oh my goodness, quite by accident, somebody had found Thomas Wright's Grail. A small stone cup is exactly what it was supposed to be. I decided to find out from his descendants, if they were still alive, what had happened to this thing. I managed to speak to his great-great-granddaughter, visited her, and I said, do you know what happened to that cup? She said, well, I think everybody in the family thought it was some kind of Victorian mustard pot or something, but yes, we've still got it. Really? Can I see it? And she took me up into the attic,
Right.
and amongst, in newspaper, wrapped up in old newspaper, amongst a load of cups and saucers and that, was this. And this is...
OK. This is it.
This is what was in her attic, all wrapped up in newspaper.
Oh. This is the Holy Grail? You see, I've seen pictures of Jesus drinking from a cup in the Last Supper. This is more of an egg cup size than a... I was expecting a chalice.
Well, precisely. The story of the Mary Magdalene Grail is that she used a small scent jar to catch drops of blood while Jesus was on the cross. I asked the lady who owned it if I could borrow it. She said, yeah. I went to archaeologists, asked them what this was. I didn't say, is this the Grail or what? I basically just said, what is this? And they firstly said, well, that's a Roman scent jar, probably dating from the 1st century AD. They said, secondly, it's made of alabaster. Well, in the Bible, it tells us it's a scent jar belonging to Mary Magdalene 2,000 years ago, made of alabaster. And I said, do you know where it came from? They said, of the type of stone somewhere in the Palestine area. So, you may be holding in your hand the most precious artifact in the world.
Wow.
The Hawkstone cup is interesting because it's not a chalice. It's actually a 1st century perfume jar without its lid. And as such, it is not linked with the Last Supper. It is linked with Mary Magdalene, who anointed Jesus with incredibly expensive spikenard perfume. And that's very interesting that the family that owned this automatically assume that it's connected with a Grail-like thing. It's a Grail-like story.
The British Museum dates it to the 1st century Middle East, right? So anything that's dated now to the 1st century Middle East, well, of course, it has to be the Grail, right? And people make this great leap from, no, it's a lovely ancient artifact. Maybe it was in the possession of a wealthy family. Fantastic. That's amazing. That doesn't make it the Grail.
I have to say that I wasn't very taken with the cup itself. It just looked like a small egg cup. But when you take a closer look at Da Vinci's Last Supper, guess what's sitting on the table in front of Jesus? A small greenish cup.
It's not very probable because of the size and the material of which it is made. But there are those who believe it to be a very interesting piece of history, though I wouldn't put it very high on the list of claimants to be the real Holy Grail.
The second contender for the real Holy Grail is here in Wales. Now, according to the legend, a small wooden cup was brought back from the Holy Land and given to a group of monks who lived in a monastery nearby. Centuries later, it found its way into the possession of a family who lived in this country house in Aberystwyth. And they allowed the sick and the infirm to drink from the cup, and, you guessed it, they got better.
According to the legend, Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus' uncle, brought the cup from the Last Supper to Glastonbury, where he founded the first Christian church in Britain. We know it today as Glastonbury Abbey. It was worshipped there as a sacred relic for centuries, until Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries in the 15th century, when a group of monks rescued it and escaped to Strata, Florida Abbey in Wales, just a short distance from Nanteos House. Before the final monk died, he passed the cup on to Thomas Stedman, the owner of Nanteos, for safekeeping. The small wooden cup passed from owner to owner of Nanteos without much attention being paid to it, until the Powell family took over the estate in the mid-19th century, when it becomes known locally as a healing cup. There are records of Mrs. Powell allowing people to drink from the cup and then being healed. In 1905, it is referred to as the Welsh Holy Grail, and almost overnight, its fame spreads far and wide. Gerald Morgan has studied and investigated the claims of the Nanteos Cup for over 30 years, and remembers seeing the original cup on display inside the house.
This is the room where I remember coming to see the sideboard here, where the cup would have been on the sideboard as I remember it.
So this is where you first saw the cup?
Oh, yeah, here in this corner.
And is this it here?
That's a good photograph of it.
It doesn't look much like a cup. I mean, it's quite badly damaged.
Well, this is the rim, and it would have gone... nearly half the cup has been lost. The base is still there, but nearly half the cup has been lost. It's been broken. It was probably broken a very long time ago. Of course, the legend grew up that all this was caused by people nibbling it. Because they wanted bits, presumably as souvenirs. Well, this is rubbish. It's a classic folk legend to explain a phenomenon. What you're looking at is a medieval mazer cup, which probably had a metal rim around the top, might even be silver. It's almost certainly made of wych elm. It's certainly not olive wood, which is very tightly grained and a very, very hard wood. This isn't very hard. You can see how broad the grain is.
Right.
There are so many legends about it to try and explain this, justify this story. But certainly it was used as a healing cup.
The Nanteos Cup is of particular interest to me because I've actually handled it and I've taken holy water from it, which I have given, when they requested it, to sick friends or people who'd contacted me about it. Now, I have also seen the ancient book in which the cup was recorded when it went in and out of the household to help somebody sick. And there are entries such as, cup was lent to John the ploughman. Next day, he has brought back the cup, having given his wife water from it, and she is now much better after the fever. And there's a whole book of these entries of where water from the cup has allegedly done good.
I know in a lot of the cases that people who come to drink out of these cups quite often are healed, and healed from very genuine complaints. Now, is it their own faith that's healed them, or is there something more going on?
You have these cups that are associated with miracles and various miraculous acts and healing, but it's all an agenda-driven exercise. These tend to be associated with Christian or with modern religious ideals. And so, if you're a believer, then the cup is special. If you're a believer, then you will have the miracle, because miracles rely on you, the person, the observer, or the person who's getting the miracle, actually wanting it, owning it, and believing it. Because if you don't, it doesn't.
The other grails look nice, and they're pretty chalices, but this seems to actually have a benefit to its followers.
Yes, that's because people believe in it. It's nothing to do with it having been in the hands of Jesus, because it never was. It was only made about 500 years ago at the most.
But you don't doubt its healing properties?
No. I've met somebody who genuinely claims to have been healed. I believe her when she says she was healed by it. Why not?
Now, Nigel Jones, the chef and general manager, reckons he spotted a couple of discrepancies between two historical photographs of the cup, and he's going to show them to me.
Hello.
Hi, Nigel.
Jamie, hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, fine, thanks. Good to see you again.
So, these photos, can
Yes,
I see them?
of course, yeah. That's the one.
OK.
And this is the other one, both of which are on display.
Right. So both an Nanteos cup.
One's an Nanteos cup and one's a copy.
Oh, right, yeah, that is different. That's the damage there, right?
It's similar to the damage there, but it's not the same, is it?
It isn't the same. So which is the real one?
I believe this is the real one, and that's the copy.
Why did they make a copy?
The pals made a copy because with people drinking from it, they used to nibble bits off, and it became too damaged, and so to preserve it, they had a copy made.
Is it here in the house?
That copy's not in the house. There is another one.
OK. Can I see that one?
Yeah, sure. Safely kept in a jiffy bag.
I didn't think I was going to find the Holy Grail in a jiffy bag. Right. So this is a replica?
It's a replica of a similar cup, yeah.
Right. OK. It's extraordinary.
The plot was getting thicker. From what I could work out, there was an original cup, which was supposed to have come back from the Holy Land via Glastonbury to Wales. Mrs. Powell then made a copy of this once people started nibbling bits off it. Hence the discrepancies in the photos. But today, neither are in Nanteos, just the replica in the jiffy bag. So where is the original cup? I was told that it's kept by a descendant of the Miralles family, who inherited Nanteos from the Powells and is rarely ever seen. But when I explained my quest to her, Fiona Miralles agreed to let me see it, as well as the actual written records of healings that are kept with it.
You believe that this is 2,000 years old?
Yes.
But why do you believe it's the cup from the Last Supper?
Well, it has such amazing powers. In it, you can see, like, the communion cup.
Can I touch it?
Only very gently.
Very gently. Well, can I... If I just... Do you mind me doing this? I'll keep it in the glass.
Yeah.
If I can open this, is that all right?
No, just leave it there.
OK, fair enough. I understand it's very... It's very...
Yes.
Is it quite fragile?
Yes.
Did people put bits of paper in it?
These are the cures.
Do you mean I'll hold the box for you then?
Yeah.
And so, what actually are these? Can I hold this?
Yes.
So this is dated 31st of May, 1858, for the use of the wife of James Morgan, cured. So what do these actually mean, these bits of paper?
Well, that they've drunk the water from the cup and they're cured.
Right, OK. And this is from, well, 150 years ago?
That's right.
Do you believe that this is the Holy Grail?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And why do you think that?
Well, I've seen a lot of people cured, and it has a marvellous feeling to it.
Has any analysis been done on the cup to prove how old it is?
No, my mother always said she didn't want carbon dating.
Why is that?
Well, she just thought people should believe in it.
But as far as you're concerned, this was the cup that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper?
Yes.
If a person was to drink from one of these cups and they were healed, like interacting with any relic, it becomes true for you. So it may be that that's a spiritual path to your God, but it's a personal relationship between you and your God, and an object that you empower and give the power to and believe that can action that, can enable that, then that will become your Grail in a way that becomes real for you.
If you drink from a Grail, a cup that you believe to be associated with the Holy Grail, and your migraine stops immediately, or you grow another leg or something, it's the Holy Grail for you. It's what matters to you, and it's a personal association. It's an intimate connection with the magical level of the Grail.
Fiona has an unshakable faith that the cup in her possession is the real Holy Grail. But I suspect that Gerald Morgan was right. Mrs. Powell was in possession of an old medieval bowl around which a whole Grail saga was weaved, creating the myth we have today. Is there any decent evidence that it was ever in the hands of Joseph of Arimathea, let alone Jesus? Well, no. It's a nice story, and one that's convinced enough people to actually bite chunks out of it over the years. But is this the real Holy Grail? Not in my view. But I do wonder what it tastes like.
Next on the list is not so much a Grail as a Grail clue. This is Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire, and in its grounds is a peculiar stone monument that some claim to contain a hidden clue as to what and where the true Holy Grail is.
The Shugborough Monument was built in the early 18th century by a wealthy landowner called Thomas Anson, the son of a famous admiral who was said to have captured a vast Spanish treasure. It depicts a painting called The Shepherds of Arcadia by Nicolas Poussin, where three men and a woman all point to a tomb. But here, for no apparent reason, it's carved in bas-relief, in reverse. Most curious of all are a series of 8 letters on the base of the monument, which have so far eluded all attempts to decode them. Even Charles Dickens had a go. Brett Harrison works for Shugborough Hall and has become something of an expert on the monument. He thinks that there could well be a number of coded clues to the Holy Grail hidden in stone, possibly leading to the tomb of Jesus.
It's a classical setting, but what's the Grail connection?
Well, if you remember, Jesus was supposed to be a shepherd of the flock being people, all people. So the shepherds guarding the tomb, are they? Remember the Poussin painting was reversed, the shepherdesses? The tomb could be where the Grail is.
So we're suggesting that the tomb of Jesus could be the Grail as opposed to a cup?
As the Holy Grail, or as a concept, or you can bring in some people, the Mary Magdalene's side as well. Is she the Grail? Does she contain the Spirit? You can go off at that angle as well. Or you can put your own theories to it. And other people have tried to break this code as well, thinking this is a code.
Explain to me why these letters have fascinated people who've tried to answer the Grail mystery.
It's 18th century, it's riddles. They're loving riddles. So they're trying to convey a message. It may well be that something has been put in after Thomas has done his grand tour. He's seen something else, and these have been added. You might not know what they mean, but someone in the 1750s and 60s who was well-travelled and as knowledgeable as you would know exactly what that means.
On the monument itself, we have 3 shepherds and a shepherdess. On the side of the tomb around which they stand is the message, Et in Arcadia ego. One of the translations is, I too am in Arcadia. And if we take the idea of Arcadia as being paradise, then the message of the Shugborough Monument is that the Holy Grail is in another world.
I think the Shugborough Monument gives a location. I think it's a code towards a specific place. I think it's part of a tradition of what's called the underground stream of knowledge and information and proof of perhaps alternative versions of Christianity, of alternative ideas. And I think these objects and documents would have been passed on through families and would have been secreted in specific places. And Shugborough Monument is encoded to maybe move people on to the next location.
Nobody knows what the inscription means. It probably is something to do with the family, that the family themselves have forgotten. This happens. I mean, they even brought in a former Bletchley Park code breakers, and they couldn't get a handle on it at all. So if they can't do it, I'm sure I don't know of anybody who can.
Is this helping me understand what the Grail is or might be?
It might be helping you go in a different direction, or several different directions. It could be that the Grail is a tomb containing Jesus, might contain Mary Magdalene. It might not be a cup, it might be a concept. So it may be whatever your Holy Grail is, whatever your belief, this could put you in the right direction.
Okay, so the Grail might be in this tomb, or the Grail is the tomb itself?
It might be either. That is where you're going. It might well be either, because it could be a concept, it could be a cup, it could be the tomb.
The final Grail of my quest is here in Valencia in Spain. It's a small stone cup called the Santo Cáliz, and it is right here in Valencia Cathedral.
According to the legend, the small stone cup was used by Jesus and his disciples. It was then brought back from the Holy Land to Spain by the Crusaders in the 12th century, where it was hidden in the cliff-top monastery of San Juan de la Peña, before being brought to Valencia centuries later. The cup has been analysed and dated to the 1st century AD. All good provenance. But what makes this little cup so different is that it has been used to celebrate Mass by not one, but two popes, John Paul II and Benedict XVI.
This is a cup that's historically traceable in literature and art to the 3rd century AD, and which was taken to Spain, and castles and fortresses were built to protect it. Jaca, San Juan de la Peña, Huesca, Zaragoza, and today in Valencia. And in fact, recent times, popes have kissed it, and it has this weird Arabic writing that you can only see in a certain light, just like Parsifal said the Grail had. So of all the cups and chalices, the one in Valencia, you know, that's darn interesting.
The cup in which the whole thing is built around is from the right date and from about the right place. Huge doubts about whether that therefore makes it the cup of the Last Supper, because, you know, how did it get there? There's no story of how it got from the 1st century to, I think it was the 11th century was the first time it actually appears in documents as supposedly being it. But I think if you're gonna pick one, if the church is gonna pick one that historians and experts can't shoot down, that would be the one to do it.
When two different popes have actually used the Valencia cup in Mass, they are tacitly, of course, endorsing it. They are saying this is special and allowing people to put two and two together and make five, basically, and say this is the Holy Grail.
As befitting what the Catholic Church believes is the actual Holy Grail, the Santo Cáliz is kept in its own Grail chapel at the cathedral, with its own group of Grail priests guarding it. The man who's charged with protecting the Grail is Canon Jaime Sancho.
Wow. This is like it. Why does the Church believe this to be the real Holy Grail?
Porque es el único que arqueológicamente sabemos que es del tiempo de Jesucristo. Otros presuntos griales son de una artesanía, de un arte posterior, aparte de la tradición que nos habla de cómo va a Roma, de cómo en Roma deja un testimonio, luego es enviado a España por San Lorenzo y luego ya tenemos todo su camino en España hasta que llega a Valencia.
When people can go on pilgrimage to see a holy object, they will believe that they have been blessed by looking at it. And we come to that old question again of the power of the mind. If you believe that a certain object which you have just seen or handled, I mean, as I handled the Nanteos Cup, you do feel a certain sense of well-being because you've had this good and sacred holy object in your hands, or at least very close to you when you've looked through the glass of the case in which it's held.
The endorsement, or the tacit endorsement of the Valencia Cup, has to be good for the Catholic Church. It says, look, we've got it. Nobody else has got it, no other church has got it, we've got it, we can lay our hands on it. This is the cup that Jesus used, the Pope's using it, hurrah.
During my quest, I've seen a lot of different cups and chalices. Is this the closest I'm going to get to the real thing?
Es el único que tiene garantía de ser de la época de Jesucristo. Otros cálices son posteriores. Un cáliz no puede ser de madera, porque la madera era impura, no se podía purificar. Otras obras, como el de New York, es artesanía cristiana. Además, ahora dicen que no es un vaso, es una lámpara de aceite. Otros, claramente, son obra medieval. Solo este, arqueológicamente, es un vaso como el que utilizaban los judíos para la cena pascual.
Relics are incredibly important to the Catholic Church because of the effect they produce. Just talking about them produces in the mind of the believers. Basically, it pulls the whole church together and it says, look, we are in control of the Jesus story, which is real, by the way, because look, we have this thing that Jesus held himself.
It's difficult to decide which of the numerous contenders for the title might be the real Holy Grail, the real cup from which Christ and the disciples drank at the Last Supper. On the other hand, the veneration for the right reason of any of those holy objects is a good thing rather than a bad one. My best guess would be for Valencia. If I was compelled to say which my favourite was, that's the one I would go for. But I wouldn't really want to put money on it.
It's been quite a quest from Hawkstone Park in Shropshire through to Valencia in Spain. And all of the cups I've seen have their own fascinating story, their own history, their own legend. But which one is the real Holy Grail? Frankly, they all require a bit of a leap of faith. But for me, the strongest evidence seems to point to the Santo Cáliz. I mean, there's no definitive proof, but it's quite humbling to think that that little stone cup in there could have come from the Holy Land 2,000 years ago. I'll see you next time.